I never liked the overnight shift, but someone had to cover it while the regular attendant was away. The gas station where I worked sat at the edge of town, a squat, flickering island of fluorescent light beside an old highway that vanished, past the pumps, into a corridor of black trees. During the day, the place was almost cheerful, a relic from the 70s with its faded orange signage and a rack of candy bars older than some of the regulars. At night, it was just me, the hum of the fridge, and the steady drone of insects battering themselves against the windows. That Tuesday, the air felt heavier than usual. The storm had cleared by sunset, leaving everything slick and shining under the sodium lights. I arrived just before midnight, coffee in hand, keys jangling, and let myself in. The bell over the door gave its usual half-hearted jingle. I flicked on the radio to fill the silence, but even the music felt thin, like it was playing from a room I couldn't quite see. I set about my routine, checking the cash register, restocking the gum and drinks, sweeping up the grit dragged in by truckers' boots. I found myself pausing at the glass doors, peering out at the puddles shining like oil slicks, the trees shifting restlessly in the wind. Every now and then a car would roar by, its headlights painting the shelves with pale, shifting shapes. But mostly, I was alone. I told myself I liked it that way. Around 1 a.m, I was mopping behind the counter when I noticed the smell. It was faint at first, a whiff of something musty and sweet, like dried flowers left too long in a vase. I assumed someone had spilled an energy drink, but the scent lingered, growing stronger the longer I stood there. The air felt oddly cold against my arms, though the thermostat read 72. Shrugging it off, I finished my chores and settled behind the counter with a crossword. I must have dozed off because the next thing I remember was the bell jangling, louder this time, almost urgent. I sat up, heart stuttering, and squinted at the door. No one was there. I told myself it must have been the wind. Still, I got up and checked the security monitors. Empty pumps, empty lot, nothing moving but a moth fluttering against the lens. The clock read 1:43. I went to lock the door just in case, but the bolt was already in place. That's when I noticed the condensation, a handprint smeared and slightly too large, fogging up the inside of the glass. I pressed my own hand to it, trying to match the size. The print was longer, the fingers splayed wide, as if someone had pressed their whole weight against the door. My breath sounded loud in the hush. I wiped the glass, telling myself it was old residue from a customer earlier in the day. Still, I found myself glancing over my shoulder as I walked back to the counter. The radio had gone silent, just a low, static crackle. I fiddled with the dial, but every station was the same. The musty, sweet smell grew stronger. I checked the fridge, thinking maybe something had spoiled, but everything was in order. The hum of the cooler seemed too loud, vibrating through the linoleum beneath my feet. I leaned in, listening. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard something behind the drone, a faint rhythmic rasp like breath. I jerked back, knocking a row of candy bars onto the floor. I laughed at myself and started picking them up, but the laughter sounded hollow, wrong. My hands were shaking. I tried to focus on the crossword, but my mind kept circling back to the handprint, the smell. The minutes dragged by. Each time the air conditioning kicked on, I flinched. The lights above the counter flickered, just for a moment, but long enough for me to see something move outside. A shadow sliding across the edge of the window, quick and sinuous, too tall to be a person. I froze, listening. The stillness was absolute. I should have called someone. Instead, I did what anyone would do, or so I told myself. I grabbed the flashlight from behind the counter and went to check the pumps. The doors groaned as I pushed them open. The night air was colder than I expected, thick with the scent of wet earth and that same cloying sweetness. I swept the beam across the lot, half expecting to see someone crouched by the pumps, but there was nothing. My footsteps rang hollow on the concrete. I circled the building, shining the light into the shadows. The trees at the edge of the lot stood motionless, their branches heavy with water. The only sound was the soft hiss of tires on the distant highway. I was almost back at the door when I saw it. Something wedged between the trash cans at the side of the building. It looked like a bundle of rags, soaked and gray. But as I drew closer, I realized it was a coat. I nudged it with my foot, and something clattered to the ground. A key ring, heavy with rusted keys and a small wooden token, carved with a symbol I didn't recognize. I picked it up, turning it over in my hand. It was warm, oddly warm, as if someone had just let it go. I turned to look back at the door. That's when I saw the second handprint, high up on the glass, as if someone had reached over their head to press their palm against it. The print was smeared, the fingers impossibly long. A cold prickle ran down my spine. I knew I should have left the keyring where I found it, but it was already in my pocket, heavy and insistent. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe it belonged to a customer who'd lost it earlier. I'd turn it in, write a note, lock it in the safe. Inside, the air felt different, thicker somehow, the lights buzzing louder than before. The radio was still static. I tried to focus on the register, counting the bills, but my hands fumbled, the numbers slipping away from me. That's when the scratching started. At first, I thought it was a branch against the window, but the sound was coming from inside, beneath the counter, faint and insistent. I crouched down, shining the light into the gloom. The scratching stopped, replaced by a soft, wet sound, like something dragging itself across the linoleum. I straightened up too fast, banging my head on the edge. For a moment, my vision swam. When it cleared, I saw movement in the reflection of the cooler doors, a shadow behind me, tall and thin, fingers brushing the ceiling. I spun around. Nothing there. The handprint on the door had multiplied. Now there were dozens, layered atop each other, some small, some so large they stretched from edge to edge. I backed away, heart pounding. The keyring burned in my pocket. I pulled it out, dropping it onto the counter. The wooden token clattered, spinning in place. It stopped with the symbol facing me, an eye or maybe a mouth, carved in deep, twisting lines. The air felt wrong, pressing in on my chest. I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The bolt slid back and forth, but the door stayed stubbornly shut, as if something leaned against it from the outside. The lights flickered again, and in that brief stutter of darkness, I saw shapes pressing against the glass. Faces blurred and shifting, mouths gaping, eyes dark and endless. The scratching grew louder, filling the room, echoing in my skull. I screamed, banging on the door, but the sound was muffled, swallowed by the buzzing lights. The keyring spun again of its own accord, the symbol glowing faintly in the gloom. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, watching the handprints crawl higher and higher up the glass. The faces faded, melting into the darkness. The scratching stopped. The radio crackled, a voice whispering just beneath the static, speaking words I couldn't understand. When the morning shift arrived, the door opened easily beneath her hand. She found me behind the counter, clutching the keyring. The wooden token pressed so tightly into my palm, it had left a welt. She didn't see any handprints on the glass. The only thing out of place was the smell, a strange, sweet scent, like dried flowers and rain. They let me go after that, said I needed rest, maybe some help. I never told them about the faces or the voices in the static. I kept the token, locked away in a drawer, though sometimes at night I hear it rattling, as if something is trying to get out. I never go near the gas station after dark, but sometimes when I drive by, I see shapes pressed against the windows, watching, and if the wind is right, I catch the faintest trace of that smell, sweet and rotting, drifting from the shadows.